Okay, it's time for what I think is going to be movie of the week. EPiC, Elvis Presley in concert.
Big E, big P, small I, big C. So this is the new film from Baz Luhrmann. This evolved during the research for Baz's 2022 biopic, Elvis biopic. And during that, he went looking for archive of unseen footage of Elvis from the 70s, because there's always been this story that, because there's the two movies, there's Elvis, That's the Way It Is, and Elvis on Tour from 70 and 72 respectively. And, you know, there's outtake footage probably. Anyway, it turns out in the Warner Brothers archive, which is in a salt mine in Kansas, and of course I knew this because when we were doing the Exorcist reconstruction stuff, that's where all the stuff is held. It's in a salt mine in Kansas because it keeps the moisture out of the air. There was apparently something like 70 boxes of film, 35 millimeter, 8 millimeter, and there was a lot of it to go through. So much of it was without sound. So then there was the whole thing about finding sound, sorting sound, syncing sound. They also found a 45-hour-long interview with Elvis, audio interview with Elvis, which Baz Luhrmann then decided could be used as a narration of sorts because, as Luhrmann said, everybody's heard everyone else tell Elvis's story, but this was effectively Elvis telling his own story. So with the help of Peter Jackson's team, who'd done all that stuff with the Beatles restorations, he assembled basically a kind of montage tone poem that jumps between rehearsal and live footage and live performance, often intercutting between different takes of the same song, with a kind of recap of Elvis's life, but focusing largely on that period in the early 70s, and to some extent narrated by Elvis himself. Here's the thing. One of the things that when people think about Elvis in the 70s and the Vegas years, they traditionally think of, you know, what's referred to as the Elvis fat period. This is not that. This is Elvis at the peak of his performing abilities. I mean, obviously, after the 68 comeback special, he had decided, which wasn't called the comeback special at the time, he had decided that he had this desire to perform. And this is when he's absolutely at the top of his game. He's in incredibly good shape. He's got the jumpsuits that look amazing. He's having an awful lot of fun. I mean, one of the funny things is the film is a 12A, and I looked at the thing about, you know, when they describe what they've certificated it for. One of the things is drugs. It says, in a comic improvisation of the lyrics of a song, Elvis refers to morphine and marijuana, which he does. Rude humor. There's a bit when Elvis picks up a bra that's been thrown onto the stage during a concert performance and puts it on his head, and he wears it.
Rude, and it's not rude humor at all.
No, I know,
really funny.
But it's 12A, so they're just saying, you know, they're kind of explaining what these things are. He is having a lot of fun.
He is, yeah.
More importantly, he is a showman at the head of his, you know, absolutely at the peak of his powers. There's a bit when he does this kind of tap dancing gag, and Sammy Davis Jr. is in the audience. You can tell everyone is looking at Elvis going, this guy knows how to put on a show. The stuff that I loved about it, quite apart from the fact that I love Elvis and I love these performances. Firstly, the fact that I think what we essentially see is Elvis as a musical director, because he is conducting the musicians, he's the backing singers, even the audience. He's doing the kind of, you know, the karate moves that we all know about, but he is absolutely musically directing the band, both in the rehearsals and more importantly on stage. And the way that the musicians watch him, I mean, they are focused on him in the same way that the orchestra will be focused on a conductor like Robert Ziegler. Every kind of, you know, every gesture means something. It's like watching a Swiss watch or a well-oiled machine functioning in complete. It's absolutely magnificent. He is conducting the performances. Second thing is the sense of epicness of EPiC. So the film opens in IMAX before opening in other cinemas. And you remember that when Moon Age Daydream, the David Bowie documentary, came out, one of the places that it was particularly successful was in IMAX because people loved the thing of seeing those Bowie performances on that huge screen. The film is designed to be overwhelming, and it is, because the presentation of those songs is just so electrifying. Whether you like Elvis or not, I think you'd watch this and it'd be like seeing Judy Garland on stage. It doesn't matter whether you like her or whether you like the songs. It's just, that is an electrifying performance. And I think that kind of montage tone poem thing it's very Baz Luhrmann. I mean, Baz Luhrmann gets criticized for, cutting between things and, making everything overly busy. But actually what the film is doing when it's cutting between, within a song, cutting between performances of the song, cutting from the rehearsal room to the live stage, to different takes of it, what it's doing is it's showing you across a range of different areas the way in which Elvis is in control of this material, the way in which what Elvis is doing is interpreting these songs and conducting it. Everyone always talks about Frank Sinatra's phrasing. They say Frank Sinatra was the great interpreter of songs. He could tell stories with songs. Elvis on stage in this period is a great interpreter of songs, and he's leading the orchestra. And the stuff, I mean, just I hate the word banter, but the stuff between him and the backing singers is just amazing. The way that all the musicians are watching him and he is right there in the middle of it. I just thought it was fantastic. What did you think, Simon?
I thought it was amazing. All of those things are true. My favorite bit of the whole thing is the fact that, first of all, it's Happy Elvis.
Yeah, Happy Elvis.
Having an absolute blast. And I love we see him being introduced to the band right at the very beginning. And they're all obviously thinking, wow, it's Elvis Presley. But these are top session musicians.
Oh, yeah.
And it's wonderful to watch them. So the drummer is not looking at the drums; he's just watching Elvis, because that's what you have to do. And you got the feeling that he could do anything. He might, I don't know, change something or introduce another bit of the song. And they didn't. If you weren't watching what Elvis was conducting and telling you to do, you would have been left behind.
Yes. And
I might have mentioned this to you sometime before. The only time I've ever seen that in a much smaller context was Ronnie Scott's, when Van Morrison launched the Avalon Sunset album. And he had on stage with him an amazing band, Georgie Fame on keyboards, for example.
Wow.
And not one of them took their eyes off Van Morrison for the entire duration of the concert, because they had no idea what he was going to do next. But it's
it's a joy to watch, isn't it? It is a joy to watch somebody conducting musicians like that.
Yeah. So I thought it was really completely brilliant. And in the same way that the Elvis biopic with Austin Butler and Tom Hanks made me think, okay, that's what it was like. This should be a double bill. They should be on together, because on the one hand you get the fiction, which explains how Elvis became the phenomena that he became, and then you see the actual Elvis in concert. And I thought it was a stunning success. Basically,
we had a communication from Sanjeev, who of course is the great Elvis. I mean, Sanjeev's Elvis trivia puts mine in the shade. I know, and Sanj sent this message to both you and I. I did say to Sanj, is it okay if we quote some of what he said? Have you got Sanj's message there?
Okay, so this is some of it. This is one of those texts which is actually an email.
Yes.
So it goes on for 3 feet. So Sanjeev says, to me, this was about Elvis's resurrection, a return to live performance, to what he felt he was made for. In a time before auto-tuned choreography, light shows and dancers, just a bloke and his band, as Elvis says in the film, playing the hell out of it. The connection with his band, his backing singers, and the audience, precise yet loose, exacting yet playful, gave a striking glimpse of why he became the behemoth of an entertainer that he was. Lots of people are great, but few are original. From both the clips of young Elvis and early 70s Elvis, it is clear that no one before him moved quite like that. The upscaling technology of the images and sound had the same effect that Peter Jackson's Get Back and They Shall Not Grow Old had. One of the simultaneously going back in time and feeling contemporary. I thought that was also brought to bear by Baz's direction, a modern edit on old material. As a fan, it wasn't a given that I'd love it. I just didn't want to. I didn't want it to be awful. I was with someone, not necessarily a fan, and she loved it. Either way, it's difficult to ignore the voice, charisma, and athleticism on display. And then he ends up by saying, the tragic note for me is that within 5 years of these performances, he'd be dead. But more than that, this was also the last vestige Elvis had of hope.
Yeah.
He talks about wanting to perform in Britain, Europe, and Japan, and that he hoped to make more movies, at least better than the ones he'd done.
Yes.
And which is true, and he does very explicitly say he wants to come to the UK.
He does. He absolutely does, yeah. And one of the movies that he wanted to make that he wasn't allowed to because of Colonel Tom Parker, who, as I always say, was neither a colonel nor indeed a Tom Parker, was A Star Is Born.
So go see it, because even
it's fab.
As Mark says, Mark is the Elvis fan. I'm kind of, I'll go and see it. But I was blown away. I thought it's a fantastic film. And as a companion piece to the Elvis movie that he did a few years back, it's absolutely perfect. So
yeah, boom.